Right now, somewhere in a laboratory archive, there exists footage of a society that had everything. No hunger, no disease, no predators, no competition for resources, just safety, comfort, and endless abundance. And within a few years, that society disappeared. Not because of famine, not because of war, not because something invaded from the outside. It collapsed from within.
This was Universe 25, arguably one of the most unsettling experiments ever conducted on social behavior. In 1968, behavioral scientist John B. Calhoun created what he believed would be the ultimate paradise for mice. Every need would be satisfied, food dispensers would never empty, water would always be available, temperatures would remain ideal year-round. The enclosure would be cleaned regularly by researchers, disease would be carefully controlled. If perfect living conditions existed anywhere on Earth, this was it. Calhoun wasn't new to this idea. By the time Universe 25 began, he had spent nearly 20 years studying population behavior. He had already constructed dozens of experimental environments in forests, barns, and laboratory settings, 24 versions in total. Each was designed to answer a single question.
What happens when survival stops being a challenge? Again and again, Calhoun observed something disturbing. Populations expanded rapidly, social structures became unstable, aggression increased, normal mating behavior broke down. Some animals became hyper-violent while others withdrew completely. Eventually, reproduction collapsed and entire colonies vanished. The pattern repeated so consistently that Calhoun began to suspect he was observing something fundamental about social life itself. Universe 25 was supposed to settle the issue once for all. Unlike the earlier experiments, this one would be carefully engineered to eliminate every possible criticism.
The enclosure was constructed inside a federal research facility in Maryland. It measured roughly 9 feet by 9 feet. Along the walls were stacked living compartments connected by vertical mesh passageways extending from floor to ceiling. Calhoun described these structures as walk-up apartments. Every nesting area had direct access to food and water. Nothing was scarce. Based on available space, Calhoun estimated the enclosure could comfortably support approximately 3,800 mice. The colony would never get remotely close. The experiment started with only 8 animals, 4 healthy males, 4 healthy females, all carefully selected from breeding stock maintained at the National Institutes of Health. On the first day, the mice were introduced into their new world and the enclosure was sealed. For more than 3 months, very little happened. The founders explored, they mapped the environment, territories formed, dominance relationships stabilized, sleeping areas became established. Then on day 104, the first offspring arrived. From that point onward, growth accelerated dramatically. The population doubled approximately every 55 days. The paradise appeared to be working.
More births meant more social interactions, more nesting groups, more activity. By day 315, over 600 mice occupied the enclosure. The upper nesting chambers became especially attractive. Animals crowded into preferred locations. Individuals constantly moved through the mesh corridors. Competition wasn't occurring over food or water. There was more than enough of both. Instead, competition emerged over social position and access to desirable spaces, and this marked the beginning of the collapse. As density increased, ordinary social behavior started to disintegrate. Dominant males found it increasingly difficult to defend territories. Some responded by becoming extraordinarily aggressive, attacking indiscriminately and repeatedly. Others simply gave up.
These withdrawn males stopped competing altogether. They wandered alone, avoided confrontation, and showed little interest in mating or social interaction. Females also changed. Many abandoned nests. Others became increasingly stressed and aggressive toward their own offspring. In some cases, mothers neglected pups entirely. Infant mortality began to rise. The social order that had sustained the colony was slowly unraveling. Calhoun called this phenomenon the behavioral sink, a condition in which overcrowding and social disruption combined to produce widespread pathological behavior. As months passed, the situation became stranger.
Certain males withdrew almost completely from society. They neither fought nor reproduced. They avoided conflict whenever possible. They spent most of their time eating, drinking, sleeping, and grooming themselves. Because of their immaculate appearance, Calhoun gave them a name, the Beautiful Ones. These mice possessed perfect fur, no scars, no damaged tails, no signs of conflict. They had opted out entirely. They no longer participated in courtship, territorial defense, parenting, or social life. They simply existed. To outside observers, they appeared healthy, but reproductively and socially, they were finished.
The colony continued expanding for a time, eventually peaking at roughly 2,200 individuals around day 560. Then growth stopped. Birth rates declined. Deaths began to outnumber births.
Young animals increasingly failed to learn normal social behaviors because they had grown up surrounded by dysfunction. Many never reproduced at all. On day 920, the final conception occurred. No more pregnancies followed.
From that point forward, extinction became mathematically inevitable. The remaining mice aged. One by one, they died. Eventually, every inhabitant of Universe 25 was gone. The last death occurred approximately 5 years after the experiment began. No epidemic swept through the colony. No starvation occurred. Veterinarians found no disease capable of explaining the collapse. The society simply ceased to function. Calhoun believed he had witnessed what he called 2 deaths. The first was the death of the spirit, the loss of meaningful social roles, purpose, and normal behavioral patterns. The second was physical death.
According to Calhoun, once the first occurred, the second inevitably followed. But there's something important that is often left out of popular retellings. Calhoun did not conclude that abundance itself was the problem, nor did he argue that population density alone destroys societies. In later writings, he emphasized something else entirely: meaningful roles. Throughout his career, Calhoun argued that healthy societies require opportunities for individuals to create, contribute, innovate, and occupy distinct social functions.
When those opportunities disappear, social systems begin to fail. His later work focused on what he called conceptual space, the human ability to continually generate new ideas, identities, institutions, and forms of social organization. In other words, societies survive not because resources are scarce, but because individuals continue finding meaningful ways to matter.
Modern scholars reviewing Calhoun's work have increasingly reached a similar conclusion. Universe 25 was never simply a story about overcrowding. It was a story about social breakdown, about environments that no longer provide meaningful participation, about what happens when purpose disappears. And that's why the experiment still unsettles people decades later, because the enclosure was built for mice, but the questions it raises were always meant for us.